Hey everybody, what's going on? This is Justin Glover, and in this video I want to show you guys exactly what we do, because we only teach what we do, and in this video I'm going to show you what we do. This is our business model. It's what I call the perfect business model, and the reason I call it the perfect business model is because it is the best way to make a lot of money without working a lot. Well, I don't want to, let me rephrase that. It's the best way to make a lot of money in the shortest period of time. It's the biggest, the most leveraged way that I've found. And I've done all kinds of business models. I've done SEO, I've done affiliate marketing, I've done lots and lots of the business models, and I've had success in all of them. And after my many years of experience, this is the business model that I choose because it fits my lifestyle better. It doesn't require me to be super active, spend hundreds of hours a week to make it run, and we can show up and make some really good money. And it gives me the ultimate flexibility. So I'm going to explain to you what we do, and it's pretty simple. You probably heard me talk about it. I talk about it all the time. I talk about it everywhere, and this is the process. So when we go into a new market, all right, there's a couple things to do. The very first thing that I do, if I'm starting a new business, I create an offer, right? I focus all my time, all my energy. I spend whatever time it takes. I spend whatever money it takes to create a perfect offer, whether that's paying someone to do the offer for us, or buying products that teach me how to do it, or whatever, right? Or just lock myself in a closet and don't come out until I have it done. Whatever I have to do to create a perfect offer, because I know once I have the perfect offer, that's the first big piece of the puzzle. And it's not always fun to sit down and push through something like this. Whenever I first started creating offers, I didn't really enjoy it. Once I've started doing more and more, and I'm learning the science behind creating offers, I really like to enjoy them. Matter of fact, now I can create an offer in any market in 2 hours flat, right? So, matter of fact, I've got these sessions where people pay, a decent chunk of money. It's nothing for what we actually get, because we get they're literally walking away with an offer completely done from idea. Like, you come to me with an idea or a topic that you want to create the perfect offer in. We set a timer. I stand in, if I've got a 10-foot whiteboard in my office, I walk around in front of that thing, and we make it happen. At the end of the 2 hours, I'll ask you question after question after question, and we'll move things around and say, here's, this probably needs to go over here, and what's this element, we need to add this is missing, we need to solve the objections, and we follow my process, right? And the beauty is, after 2 hours, you have an offer. It's completely done. It's considered the perfect offer. So this can be done in 2 hours, literally, right? If you're doing it yourself for the first time, it will probably take you time. But here's my advice: do whatever it takes. Spend whatever money, spend whatever time. And here's why: if you have a perfect offer, it sells itself. Okay? There's only like, the next step is you create a perfect webinar, okay? And you start selling your perfect offer. And if you want to sell more on your webinar, and you want these numbers that I'm going to give you, I'm going to show you what a $40,000 a month business looks like, and exactly how easy it is to create that. And it's very, very doable pretty quickly. And you can do it in any market, and I'll show you how to do it here on the next slide. But before we get into that, this is a big piece of it. You have to have the perfect offer, okay? And it's not just any offer. I'm talking about an offer that sells for $500 or an offer that sells for $1,000. One of those two price points. Every now and then there's an exception to that, but it's an offer that we sell on a webinar, okay? High ticket enough to make you some good money, not too high ticket where you can't sell it on a webinar, okay? So that's the first thing I do, is I create an offer. I go through my process and come up with an offer. So now I got this offer for $1,000 that I'm going to sell. Okay. The next thing I do is I turn all of my focus, all of my energy, all of my attention to creating the perfect webinar. And the perfect webinar is basically, it's a script that I've picked up over the years of doing webinars. I've picked up stuff from lots and lots of different people, from sales webinars that I've attended and put on myself. I've delivered well over 100, probably hundreds of sales presentation webinars where I actually sold something at the end. And I've done a lot of them. There's been webinars where I've tried to sell something at the end and it didn't work, and then webinars where I sold stuff at the end and just crushed it and it didn't work. I've sold from stage, and I've done really good and I've done really bad. And the point is, when you have, like, I've developed a script, a specific script that I've pulled from just my years of experience, and I can sit down, just like I do offers, I can sit down and create a perfect webinar in about 2 hours. Now, it's not a perfect webinar in 2 hours because there's a tweaking process. There's a 10 to 15 week process where I deliver the webinar live every single week, and I'll explain why I do that in a minute. But the first thing that I do, or the next thing I do, is I create a perfect webinar. I just get it done. Again, we offer the same, I do the same thing. At first I didn't really like doing these or enjoy doing them, but now I love doing them, and I'm pretty darn good at them. We've got a template that we follow. We've got a perfect webinar process that we go through, take people through. Again, I stand in front of the whiteboard. We get on Skype. We pull up slides. Half of the session is us brainstorming and answering some questions about your avatar and their beliefs and who we're selling and the angles and stuff like that. Once we get those questions answered, then we just dive in and do a screen share and build out the actual presentation. So at the end of this 2 hour session, you have a done for you webinar. Like, the webinar is done. So then you got a perfect webinar, you got a perfect offer to sell on the webinar. And when you have those two things, the magic happens. And I'll give you an example of that here in a minute. But so that's step 2, is create a perfect webinar. The next step, when I'm going to a market, I've created the offer, then I turn my focus to creating webinar, then I turn my focus to scheduling and promoting that first webinar. Okay, so now that the webinar is done, next step is go to GoToMeeting, set up a free account if you don't have one, and promote the crap out of your webinar. Schedule it for next Thursday, whatever today is, next Thursday, and start promoting it, getting as many people as you possibly can there. All right, just get as many people as you possibly can. And I'll share with you my advertising strategy on how much money to spend on getting people there and all that here on the next slide as well. But you want to schedule and promote that first webinar, and then you deliver the webinar. Okay, you'll deliver the first webinar. It may go amazing. Nobody may show up. That all depends on your advertising strategy, your influence over your audience. It depends on a lot of different factors. Okay, but the point is, the process does not change. Okay, and this freaking works like crazy, guys. So you schedule, promote, and deliver the first webinar, and then based on that webinar, you're going to get some feedback. All right, you're going to get questions. You're going to have objections, and you pay attention to those, because after every single live webinar you do, you take all the questions and you go back to your webinar and you build a slide in that answers those questions. Then you go and you find all the objections, the common objections, and you go back to your slide, your presentation, you build a slide in that answers those objections. Maybe you tell a story or a testimonial or something like that that answers that objection. And all of a sudden, next week when you deliver the webinar, again, those questions go away, those objections go away. So you're one step closer. But then you got new questions, new objections, and that happens every week. And you do the same thing. After the webinar, you go back and you spend it takes me about 90 minutes to deliver a good webinar, and it takes me about another 90 minutes to update the presentation after I've gotten the feedback. And so about 3 hours a week once the webinar is created, because every week you're not creating a new offer, and every week you're not creating a new webinar. It's the same one, you're just making it better. All right, and you're getting new people on the webinar, which I'll show you how to do in a second. And so you refine the webinar, that's step 4, based on the feedback you get, okay? And you do this weekly, that's step 5. And eventually, all questions go away. All objections will go away. And this process, just from my experience, seeing this done in my business, in other businesses, this is roughly 9 to 15 weeks. All right, this is about a 9 to 15 week process that it takes just doing the webinar live that many times before all the questions go away and before you get really good and consistent, because there's going to be some fumbles and all that stuff, right? So 9 to 15 weeks, that's what you're shooting for. And just so happens that's roughly about that time frame if you follow the advertising strategy that I'm about to give you here in a little bit on the next slide. That time frame, if you're taking the feedback and you're tweaking it, making it better, and you're following this process, you're looking, depending on the market and your price point and how aggressive you're advertising, usually about the 9 to 15 week mark. That's anywhere around the 30 to 50 to $80,000 per week revenue in sales. Okay, because as you'll see in the advertising model, we invest more into traffic each week after that. So I don't care who you are, that's good money. Regardless of what your income goals are, this model will absolutely help. You don't have to follow I'm going to break down the numbers in the anatomy of a $40,000 a month business, because that's something that anybody can do if they want. So I'm going to show you what that'll look like. But first, let me get on to step number 6. Once you have repeated this and you've delivered the webinar multiple times, all the questions go away, you have, all the objections go away, and you're crushing it every time you deliver the webinar. You're closing, minimum 10%. Usually it's a little bit higher than that, but I will just tell you, 10% webinar is very achievable. And when you get a webinar at 10%, if you follow the correct strategy, you have $1 million webinar, period. All right. So I've done this with this business model myself, and currently doing it for the second time. I've taught lots of people how to do it. I know lots of people that do this model, and it just works. It works. It's magic, and I've refined it, and I'm sharing it here with you now. So step number 6 is, once the questions go away, once all of the objections have gone away, and you feel like you have the perfect webinar, and again, this is around the 9 to 15 week mark. At that point, you then automate the webinar. And when you automate the webinar, then you can go and build another one. Go build another offer, right? And that's the whole model. Now, let me give you a little tip. Here's what's going to happen when you automate the webinar. Your sales conversion will go down a couple of points. However, you'll make more money, because the webinar will not only be played on one day a week when you do it live, it will be played potentially every day of the week. Okay, so you can then scale up your advertising a little bit, and once it's automated, and that way you make more money, and you can make some good money with that particular strategy. So that's the 6-step process, and I follow this no matter what market I'm going into. If I want to build a business, and I would highly suggest you look at your business. This model will apply. If you're thinking, I have no idea what I would sell for $1,000 or $500, that's okay. We can help you do that. All right, you come with a topic, you tell us where you want to create the offer and what market, and we'll walk you through the process and get it done. All right. We have processes, we got formulas for this, and yeah, there's a lot of good stuff. So let's move on to the next step, which is the advertising strategy. So week 1, what I usually tell people to do, depending on if they have an audience or not, because a lot of people tend to think that they have a lot more influence over their audience than they actually have, which is normal. It's totally fine. I mean, this is a great exercise for people to do. Once your webinar is done, right? You created your perfect offer, you created your webinar, you're ready to deliver it for the first time. What you do is you go back to your existing audience, whether it be an email list, Facebook groups, forums, chat rooms, phone contacts, whatever. All right, Twitter followers. You go to your existing audience and you promote the crap out of your webinar. You tell everybody that you could possibly tell, and you remind them, and you do everything you do. You hustle for that week, and you get as many people onto that webinar as possible. All right, now that'll give you a good idea to see how much influence you actually have in the audience, in your audience. You may be surprised. You may realize, dang man, I got a lot more people than I thought. You may be surprised the other way and think, man, I thought I was going to get a lot more people than this. Nobody showed up. All right. Regardless, it's just a matter of doing the webinar, getting the first one done, and sort of seeing how much influence you have at the same time. That's my strategy when I go into it. Now, if I'm creating an offer, the second offer in the same marketplace, then I don't, I'll just go right into the paid advertising strategy. But if it's a new market and I'm curious to see how much how much pull do I have with this market, then I'll take that approach. Okay, so that's week one. Week two, you spend the asking price of your offer as your weekly advertising budget. Okay, so here's what I mean. If your offer sells for $400 or for $500, all right, $497, then you spend $500 on advertising. If your offer that you're selling on the webinar is $1,000, then you spend $1,000 on advertising. Okay, this way all you have to do is make one sale each week to break even. All right, everything over that is complete profit. And everybody that didn't buy, you still have on your list. So you're still building your list. You can follow up with them, invite them to next week's webinar and such. All right. So one sale to break even every week. So $1,000 offer for the example, you would spend $1,000 on advertising. All right. And that would basically, you could do it however you want, solo ads, banner ads, on blogs, you find where your people are and you invite them to the webinar, whether it's advertising on blogs where they hang out or forums or, fit targeting them on Facebook or whatever, right? That part, you get people there. Okay. So then what you do is you reinvest 30% of your profit back into getting more people to attend the next webinar. So every week your weekly advertising budget is the price of your offer, okay? Because if you've got the right script, let me give you some numbers here in a second. But every week you reinvest 30% of your profit. So week one, let's say the first week you invest $1,000 in advertising, okay? Well, you make one sale, you break even. Everything over that, you take 30% of, and you reinvest it next week. All right. So next week you got your $1,000 that you invest every week, but now you got another. Let's say you made 4 sales from the first webinar. Well, you take 30% of the profit of those 3 sales. So maybe now you got another $1,000, and then next week instead of getting you have twice as many people register for the webinar. If you have twice as many people register for the webinar, you'll see how that plays out here in a second. But you just keep doing this until you max out the lines. GoToWebinar, depending on what platform you're using, you may be limited in the seating that that you can actually put on the lines. So GoToWebinar has a 1,000-person limit. So we start with $1,000. We get as many people there as we possibly can. Next week, we take 30% of our profits from the webinar. We reinvest 30% of it back into getting more people there next week. We have more people show up, we make more sales, we take 30% of that, we reinvest it again, so we have even more people show up, and our advertising budget grows every week. The number of people that register grows every week, the number of people that shows up grows every week, and the number of people that we close grows every week. All right, so that is sort of the strategy, and you do that until you max out the lines. Once you get to where you're having 1,000 people show up, you really can't. That's about the max that you can do on that particular webinar platform, and that's fine because you're going to be repeating it anyway. And it's not like we're trying to get 10,000 people on a webinar or anything. 1,000 people is great. You can make a lot of money from putting 1,000 people online. All right, so that's the advertising strategy, and here's how the numbers actually break down. Here's the anatomy of a $40,000 a month business. So the first thing you do is you get people to register for the webinar. Okay, so let's say just to do this, a $40,000 a month business, 300 people registered for your webinar one week. Okay, 1/3 of the people that register for the webinar actually show up, and that's a number that's across the board. All right, so if you have 300 people register, you'll likely have around 100 actually show up. Now, when you talk about the perfect offer and the perfect webinar, when your message and your offer are they when they are when the perfect offer is, you follow the perfect offer blueprint and it follows all the criteria and you have the right message, it's science. I mean, it gets to a point where it's automatic. Let me give you an example. You, regardless if you are a man or a woman, as long as you could disguise your voice to sound like a man, you could come on to my webinar next Thursday, next week, or any of the webinars that I do live. You could come on to the webinar, you could read the script, and you would close anywhere between 5 and 7% of the people that were there. All right, not even being me, just by simply reading the script, not knowing anything about what I was selling, just reading word for word what the script says. Now, that's the power of having a script that matches up with the perfect offer. So the perfect webinar script with the perfect offer, they just work. Okay. Now it's easy to get up to 10%. Okay. Whenever you inject some personality and you're not pretending to be somebody else, and you learn about better salesmanship and things like that, which all happen within a matter of a couple of weeks. Just doing a few webinars and all, you start to get better. So as you learn this stuff, your closing percentage goes up, and we're going to call it 10% because that's easy to do. Plus the math is easy. So if you get 100 people on a webinar and you close 10%, if you follow the script, that means you make 10 sales. Now, if you're selling a $1,000 product, 10 sales times $1,000 is $10,000 in revenue for one webinar. Okay. And guess what you do next week? You reinvest 30% of those 9 sales. 30% of that goes back into getting more traffic next week. Okay, to get more people, more than 300 registered for next week's webinar. So maybe you get 600 people that register for next week's webinar. Maybe you get 380 or 400 or whatever. Right? Regardless, you're probably going to get more next week if your traffic budget is bigger. So you get more people to register, more people show up. You still close. You deliver the script. You close 10%. You make your webinar or your revenue, and you reinvest 30% back into traffic next week. And you do this every week, and if you didn't make any increases, all right, just this first week, 300 people, 100 showing up, 10% closing, $10,000 a webinar, you do that every week, you get 300 people registered, and you don't reinvest. Let's say you don't even listen to the strategy and you don't reinvest, and you just do you get 300 people registered for the webinar, 100 of them show up every week. You do that every week, and you got a $40,000 a month business. Okay. Now, the big question is, there's obviously there's a question I addressed earlier. What do I sell for $1,000? Well, that I don't know. You just have to go through the process. Okay. But this is the anatomy of a $40,000 a month business. This is the reason I love this business model, because regardless of what your goals are, if you just want to make 10 grand, an extra 10 grand a month, this business model is the easiest and fastest way to do it. This is what I would do if I had to do that, if I had to go and make that type of money. If you want to make $100,000 a month, you can do it with this business model. Okay. I've seen people do $100,000 a week with this business model. That's big money. And guess what they're doing? They're not creating new offers every week. Most of the time, they're not even driving the traffic. We don't even drive our traffic. All right. We eventually started paying someone 20% to drive traffic for us. So all we have to do, we don't even have to promote the webinars. All we do every week, we show up, deliver the webinar. People are there. We deliver the webinar. We follow the script. We close. We make money. We tell the traffic guy, hey, here's how much money we made. Here's your cut. Here's how much we want to put into advertising next week. And he goes to work. And that's it. And then we show up next week. We spend 90 minutes after the webinar to make it better, to answer objections and questions. And we do it again next week. And that's it. That's the entire model. Okay. Now, there's other stuff obviously that you can do, and we'll help you with that. And there's a lot of building that takes place up front. All right, I don't want to paint the picture that anybody can step in and do this. There's a lot of work and a lot of stuff that can go right, and a lot of stuff that can go wrong as you're building these things out. And guess what? That's just the learning process. So I would much rather you guys learn from us who have been through this process multiple times. We've created multiple offers. We've created multiple webinars. We know what the heck we're doing, and we can help you do it. We've got different services available where we'll help you create a webinar. We'll help you create an offer. We'll help you even write the follow-up emails to make sure to get more people showing up to your webinars. We'll help you write follow-up emails to get people that don't show up to make sure that they watch the replay, and to go in, if they watch the webinar and don't buy, we'll help you follow up with those people and tell them, hey, don't forget to go watch and go buy. So all of these little things that you can do, I don't want to say that, it's only 90 minutes a week or 3 hours a week right out of the gate, because there's a lot of stuff, a lot of things that you can do in order to get to that perfect webinar, where you just show up and deliver it every single week. All right, it takes a little bit of work to get there, but once you get there, man, I'm telling you, it's just it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. You can make a lot of money. You can have a lot of freedom. Pretty much, I would be surprised if there's somebody listening to my voice right now, hearing this, that's $100,000 a week or $100,000 a month would not meet your objectives. If your objectives are a little bit bigger than that, again, that's just with one webinar. That's with one webinar. You can go and create multiple offers. There's a reason that I really, really like this business model. It's because it freaking works, and it's the easiest that I know, easiest way that I know how to get results for myself. And we teach what we do. We don't teach a bunch of stuff that may or may not work, and it's going to waste your time. So that is it. That's the business model. That's the thing that I wanted you guys to understand. So hopefully you are, if you're watching this, you're more than likely on the homework page, or you've requested to talk to somebody on our team, or I've sent you here, or something, and you're learning about maybe in that you're considering working with us on a personal level. These are just some things that we offer. I believe that we can definitely add a ton of value. I'd love to get on the phone with you and talk. We have people that are ready to chat with you. They understand this business model. They know it. They're here to help you and say, okay, well, here's how we can apply this business model to yours. Because I'm telling you, if you want to apply this business model and you want to implement this for yourself, I don't know if there's anybody else better that you can learn from, because this is what we do. This is what we teach. So that being said, thanks for watching, and let us know if you have any questions. All right, talk soon.